Good evening, folks, and welcome back to another episode of When It Was Real. This show focuses on the glory days of the WWWF in the 1970s, the perfect time to grow up as a professional wrestling fan. Now, I'm just some guy waiting outside the garden for an autograph, but this other guy, he's the one that's signing your program. He's the one and only Nikita Brezhnikov. Nikita, how are you, my friend?
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you again, my brother Benny, the best.
Oh, pleasure is all mine. So, folks, we got to just take a get a quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll get down to business. So, give me 1 second here, so we can pay the bills. This is Benny Scala, the one and only player. Folks, I am beyond excited to be co-hosting this new show, When It Was Real, and I am just as excited to be announcing our new sponsor, the Free Spirited Company. Free Spirited is a phenomenal old-school clothing company that specializes in short and long-sleeve T-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, graphic tees, heck, even yoga pants. These T-shirts are, to quote Rocky's manager Mickey Goldmill, a wake of art. Yours truly will be rocking the Free Spirited merch on each and every episode of When It Was Real. Not only are these shirts eye-catching, but they are very comfortable as well. Like what you see? Please go to shopfreespirited.com and use our special code MP20 to receive a 20% discount on all purchases. Again, that is shopfreespirited.com, and that code is MP20. As the poet laureate of the Monte The Pharaoh YouTube channel, I will leave you with this. If you like what you see, go buy a tee. Heck, maybe 2 or 3. When your friends tell you, hey, you look like the bomb, send them over to shopfreespirited.com. And here I am, rocking the merch.
There you go.
So you know. Well, Nikita, I really don't know how we can duplicate last week's show with the great Tony Garea, but we're going to give it the old college try. And, since we are covering the history of the tag team championships, his name's going to come up a couple times again anyway, right?
Absolutely. And that was a great segue. So we're set.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the history of the tag team championships, we're going to cover a couple of other things here. First one is I believe I have the date right, November 19th, 1957 riot at Madison Square Garden. So who was involved, Nikita?
Well, real quick, let's give a toast, Ben.
Oh, we forgot our toast. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Yes, a toast to the great tag teams of yesteryear when it was real. Salute.
Yes. And I'm going to say a quick shout out to a good friend named Zia. She really helped me because I wouldn't be talking to you without her, because she really set up my internet for me.
Well, thank you.
Know how
thank
that
you,
goes.
Zia. All right.
So,
yes, I was so anxious to get into the material that I forgot my drink. So I'm going to do it again.
Excited. That's good. 1957. The great Antonino Rocca teaming up with Eduardo Carpentier, and they were opposing Dr. Jerry Graham, the mental case. I mean, this guy was legitimate crazy.
He was psycho.
Ay. And my favorite name of all time, Dick the Bruiser. I mean,
yes.
How do you beat that name,
Who was said on the cover of a wrestling magazine, I can lick any man alive. I don't know if I brag about that, but
well, he could. So, folks, that was, in those days, tag team wrestling was like a big gimmick. Okay, it was like they didn't have a whole lot of matches on the card, but tag team was like the big thing. It was almost like a cage match. And these four, it was like, holy mackerel, and they went at it. The problem was Rocca was bleeding, and he was as popular as Bruno. This was, of course, before Bruno's time, but he was very popular. So when Rocca got a hold of Jerry Graham, he smashed his head into the ring post. I think we may have been shooting a little bit at this point, and that was it. Fans got involved. Police got hurt. Fans got hurt. We almost lost wrestling in Madison Square Garden that night, folks. Let me tell you. But it doesn't get any
I think 8 people got arrested or something like that. It was a lot of arrests. I think like 8 or 9 police officers got injured. It was definitely a melee, right?
Yes, it really got out of control. So that's a little bit of history. We do
And let me
have there's some yeah, Benny's got some great photos, and it's like there's a history to the history, and here it was. This was again, you almost lost Madison Square Garden. I think if Vince Sr. had been promoting it, well, maybe Jess McMahon promoted that one because it stayed in the family tree all those years. If it had been Vince Sr., he'd probably had a heart attack.
Well, Nikita, what got the fans so irate? I thought I had read that Rocca very rarely got color, and it was I guess when Graham busted
Yeah,
him open, it started
yeah.
the whole thing, right?
You know how it goes, how much we love our favorites, and Rocca was a favorite, and so yeah, once they cut him, I think from what I've heard through the years, that's when fans started to mill closer to the ring, and then when Rocca decided he was going to give Graham a receipt, well, that was it. That just sent everybody into a frenzy. They were happy. It was a happy frenzy, but then I've seen quite a bit in my time over the years as a fan watching fans go crazy. I witnessed a riot with Spiros Arion one time. We'll talk
Yeah. Oh
about
yeah.
we talked about that when we had him, and it's like
Yeah.
it doesn't take much. It was an old man that started that one with a chair, and after they intercepted him, they just kept coming, and oh yeah, what a mess.
Kind of a chain reaction. But now, no history of tag team wrestling in New York can be started. And where are they? They're gone again. The Mongols. For some reason my picture's gone.
That's Nikolai from upstairs doing that to us.
I think he's messing with us. Yeah.
He's playing the big rib. That was it, folks. 1970 is where we're going to start with the history of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championship. And yes, the Mongols were technically the International Tag Team Champions, but follow along with us. It will play itself out. So June 15th, not too far around the corner, Beppo and Guido Mongol. Now, Benny and I were active fans at that time.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
But it was like, wow, we're looking at Nikolai. This was before Andre and even before Blackjack Mulligan. Nikolai was a giant, but he was only 19 years old. That's the amazing part of it. And here they come, these two giants. They wrestled Victor Rivera, the reigning champions, and Tony Marino. There's that name, Tony Marino, again.
Batman, yeah.
Yep. And I mean, he looked great. Tony Marino.
Oh, he was well conditioned.
No Bruno, but he was well conditioned. So that was their debut. But let me tell you, let me give you people a little bit of background on this. In 1970, Bruno wrestled Ivan Koloff on January 19th. They drew 16,858. Not bad at all. 61,281 for a house. And if I'm giving too many statistical facts, tell Benny.
What was the gate, Nikita? How much was the gate?
61,281 and 50 cents.
Your average ticket price was less than $4. Wow, amazing.
Okay. Next month, now they're not monthly yet. March 9th, Bruno against Killer Carl Kovacs, the Big K. And that dropped down to 14,328. They brought in 52 grand that night, 860. So this night, June 15th, the Mongols, when they hit the Garden, it's a sellout. 20,819. The house jumps up to 85,716. And so naturally, hey, we're going to put the belts on these guys. So the first fall, Victor Rivera misses his famous cannonball. He gets pinned. Second fall, Victor returns the favor and puts Guido to sleep. And then the third fall, there was a little double teaming. Then Beppo / Nikolai comes in, gives an elbow, give a guy a leg spread and the stomp, covered him. They got the pin. They were managed by Tony Angelo on this.
That's right, Tony Angelo.
Yes, this was one of his final appearances. They're the only team in history that had two managers because towards the end of this, that's when the contracts were sold, along with Ivan Koloff, to Lou Albano, and Angelo got Crusher Verdue, and it was just like they're both going to be on their way out, so it was no big deal. So that was great, and then it continued because on July 10th, then the Mongols wrestled. Bruno was wrestling Crusher Verdue in a return match. The Mongols wrestled Dr. Bill Miller. Who remembers that name? He was a
From
veterinarian.
Columbus, Ohio, the veterinarian.
Yep, with Gorilla Monsoon. That drew another 20,000.
Wow.
But guess what? Chief J. Strongbow made his debut in the Garden. You see, 1970, you got the Mongols, the Chief, Lou Albano. A lot of things started to change, and the ticket prices or the gates started to really climb. August 1st, Bruno and Victor go at the Mongols. Yeah, they brought in 17,000, but you're still talking at that time. Again, it wasn't quite monthly, so people were going to the shore. The kids ready to go back to school, vacation time. They weren't worried about wrestling too much. And then September the 14th, they used Beppo against Bruno in a singles match. Still drew 17,000. And that match was one of the first. It wasn't quite an hour, but it went close to it. It was like a 52-minute match. I mean, that's impressive. But again, the 19-year-old, and I think that's where Bruno and Nikolai's relationship really started to flourish. It's like the respect, the mutual. I know Bruno was Nikolai's hero without a doubt, and the mutual respect just took off from that point on.
Well, Nikita, I remember, and I didn't mean to interrupt it. I remember that I don't know if it was Morgan or Bill Cardell was talking about that Beppo pinned Bruno in a tag team match. Is that what got him the match against Bruno? And when I heard that, I was shocked. It's like nobody pins Bruno.
Not there, no, not New York, because even with a 2 out of 3 fall tag match, no, New York wouldn't do that. It's probably Boston, if you want my opinion. I'll have to go do some research on it. But then, it continued. And then the night that Bruno lost the Koloff, they're still carrying 21,000. Chief and Monsoon go after the Mongols that night. Now, the next month is when Pedro beats Ivan Koloff. And then that's it. The Mongols disappear after that card. And again, it was a rematch with the Chief and Monsoon. Now, I can give you a little insight on that. They wanted more money. Guido went to Vince Sr. and he said, hey, look at the facts. We're bringing people in. Look
Right.
how the gates changed. Wouldn't budge. So they said, see ya. They actually bought the Pittsburgh territory from Bruno.
Right. Didn't they do some defenses in Pittsburgh, though?
Yes. Some title defenses. And Bruno and Beppo teamed up in Pittsburgh. It's like,
oh,
wow.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, they've turned them face. Well, who was it that talked about that? I think, was it Michael Mansky where he said, Hank. They said, after a while, Hank Klimkowski, Hank Hudson, it's like it got to be Bruno against Steele, Bruno against Von Erich, Bruno against Koloff. We have to do something different. And then once the Mongols took over, the trend continued, and it's like, okay, we got to change this up a little. And then they turned them face, which, I don't know. That's a tough sell, but they made it work. I'll tell you real quick a funny story. This involves your old buddy, Baron Mikhail Cicluna. So the Mongols, they're leaving. I think it may have even been Pittsburgh. They're on their way home, going to the next town. It's a blizzard. So they got to try to find a hotel. All the hotels, they're full. So Beppo, Nikolai, says, well, listen, you guys can sleep one in the front seat, one back seat. I sleep in the trunk. And they said, sleep in the trunk? He's like, yeah, I have the furs. Believe me, to him, that was nothing. Because he said when he used to room with guys, he would open the windows and they would pile like towels and blankets under the door to keep the draft out. Because Nikolai's wife, she had the Grand Floridian in Florida, down at Disney. They had a timeshare. So every year she'd go in January. First thing he did, turn off the heat when she'd leave. open up all the windows. He loved it. It was no bullshit. He loved the cold weather. So the next morning, Nikolai said they tapping on the window was state policeman. He says, "Hey, you guys okay?" They say, "Yeah, but you better check on the guy in the trunk." He said, "In the trunk." So they open up the trunk and it's like, "Hey, good morning, officer. Here's Nikolai sleeping with the furs."
Wow.
That's better.
That's a great story.
Yes.
You're not going to hear that anywhere else but here.
And they loved Mike Cicluna, without a doubt. And I got to witness that. The bond was very tight, very close.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit. Let me see if I can pull this up here.
Go ahead. There you go.
So that's the very first, right? So according to Wikipedia, they won this at a house show in New Orleans on June 3rd, 71. So was the Big Easy the early day Rio? Did they really win the belts there?
Well, it is named New Orleans, but it was May 31st, Memorial Day that year, because there was a TV taping and they announced it on the TV. And they supposedly beat Dick the Bruiser, there's that name again, and the original Sheik. It was a tournament, and the two finals in the tournament were these two. Crazy Luke Graham, one of my favorite names in wrestling as well, and Tarzan Tyler. Now
Tyler, I remember Tyler from I've watched some old Capitol Wrestling shows. They're very rare, but on YouTube, and Tyler was getting a pretty decent push as a singles guy in '66. I don't remember him being back in the territory until I guess now.
Right, and he was good size. He was nobody you could push around.
No, definitely had a good physique.
But with Luke, again, Luke had been around with Dr. Jerry, and then they adopted Superstar years later, making him a Graham brother, and Eddie as well. And it's like that taped thumb. How many years had he used that taped thumb? All the way up to 78 when he left. And he returned,
right,
back then, and he had the taped thumb. But Lou Albano, and this counts as Lou's second tag team champions. Even in his own math, which is true, it's like, yeah, I'm the manager. Now, they carried still the international tag team belts. They didn't get any change yet, because with the belt structure, at least, that will come with the next team. But Pedro wrestled Luke as a single in the Garden, June 21st. Then Pedro and Monsoon went against them. And I mean, they're drawing good, 21,000. These guys had the heat. And then they did something, if people remember or not. The Chief was getting a trophy for Wrestler of the Year. And they got Chili Willie, Bill Cardile. He's in the ring. And here comes Crazy Luke, then Tarzan Tyler, and Lou Albano. And it's like, what the hell? They say, "Oh, yeah, we want to congratulate you." Well, of course, next thing boom, they hit him from behind, take the trophy, crack it over his head. Chief is busted open. So that started a hot feud, because for a while, when these guys were having tag matches on television, the Chief would come out with the tomahawk and he'd be chasing him out of the ring. It was wild. I mean, when we were fans back then, we were so lucky. I mean, it was just great. You're sitting there watching this on television. It's like, it's unbelievable. And it's TV. You didn't have to pay a dime. But they would pack so many good things into that hour that we just loved it.
You weren't missing that for anything. I always said if there was, a nuclear holocaust outside, I'd check during the commercials. I mean, there's no way I'm leaving my couch. I'm watching.
And you know how lucky those people that would go to the TV tapings were? I mean, it's like, wow. Because you're going to see it first. And I guess they just figured back then, nobody's going to make the long distance call and go squeak to the whole world what they just witnessed. Because there were a lot of times where you'd be sitting in an arena, and like Baltimore, we were a couple of weeks behind on the broadcast. So sometimes we would see the team come out with the tag belts, didn't know that it had changed. And it was like, what the hell? It happened with the Lumberjacks. But it was kind of neat. You just didn't know what was going to happen, you know? It's like going on a date. You don't know what, which way it's going to turn. It was a neat
Right.
situation. We enjoyed it. So, you know, Pedro what with Stasiak in the main event on October 25th, and Chief and Victor are teaming up. And I always liked that team. And they were strong together against Tyler and Graham. 22,000. This was the biggest house yet.
Wow.
22,070 for a gate of 104,456. It's like, damn,
That's big back
unbelievable.
then. Yeah.
The next month, Pedro's wrestling Freddie November 15th, and they bring Chief and Victor back, return match. Of course, it was the same old, same old. They win, but there's a DQ mixed in. So it's like, son of a bitch. How many times did we see that? It was either that or the tag match would go on last. And folks, you got to know this. Usually they were 2 out of 3 falls, standard. That didn't really change until 1978. And a 6-man was 3 out of 5.
Oh yeah.
So you were good for 20 minutes, possibly 30 on a tag match. So if they brought them out last, it's like, damn, this ain't going to make it to the curfew. And curfews were strictly enforced, especially in Baltimore. You know why, Benny? Because the state athletic commission, the old bastards wanted to go home. That's why they enforced it. Because they would waive it from time to time. But it's like, nah, we're done. We want to go home. Like you could tell at Madison Square Garden on the cards that it was bad weather. Yeah, man, they shut that thing down at 11. That's it. Boom, we're out of here. And a lot of usually when the last match would go on, you'd see the commissioners putting their jackets on, heading for the exits. They didn't care what happened at that point. They were heading home. Wild.
Yeah.
So the next month is December the 6th. It was a sellout because Carl Gotch and Rene Goulet are going for the tag team title. And it was a rematch with Freddie Blassie and Pedro. And that's fine. You know, I mean, of course, Freddie, he was still, we didn't have any inkling that he was going to be, next year would be, 73 would be his last year. So he was still solid in our eyes. But I think people were there to see the tag team title match, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Now, when a lot of people say, well, why did they put the belt on Carl Gotch? And you know, he and Rene Goulet, because you mentioned it, that they actually had wrestled the month before in a scientific
I was going to say,
match.
was this just a random pairing? I don't remember seeing them as a tag team.
From what I've heard, it's like they wanted to give Gotch, a little rub. They talk about Mil Mascaras having a big ego and not wanting to sell. They said this guy was 10 times worse. He was a real pain in the ass. He was a splinter in everybody's ass. But so they figured, okay, throw him the belt. Him and, Goulet was always a good worker, good company man. So it's like, go ahead. You guys go run with it and see what happens. Now, you were saying, as we prepared for the show, that on the January card, that they beat Juan Sebastian and Pedro Goiti, but they were the Russians. So they were basically face fodder. They weren't what you'd call like top-notch talent, nothing like Tyler and Graham, but the Russians managed by Nikita Malkovich, and they would dance in the ring. They do
There's an name from the past.
But in the Garden, the same deal with the mask. You couldn't wear the mask, so they would wear just the hood, and they would, of course, remove that face covering, which looks stupid as could be. I don't know why they just didn't take the whole thing off, but yeah, they would get out there, and so Gotch and Goulet, they make a title defense, fine. But the month before, now this is big. The Russians drew on the same night that Gotch and Goulet won the belt. They drew with the Kangaroos, Don Kent and Al Costello, and that was big deal. The Kangaroos were one of the best teams ever.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, okay, that helped. They drew, so it got the Russians some notoriety. So it gave Gotch and Goulet, when they went over on them, a nice big win, and it's like good. Everybody went home happy. But yeah, the Russians, because it's kind of wild. Somebody had asked me. They said, I heard Nikita Malkovich actually designed, and Gotch and Goulet were the first team to wear the oval-shaped belts, which would become the standard, like Pedro Morales, and because he was the first heavyweight champion to wear that new size belt, because it went from that wraparound, huge, big emblem to that it was just an oval shape, and it looked great. It had the eagle, and then the plaques, like 3 plaques on each side. It really looked sharp. One would be red, one would be blue, and then the tag champions had their own. So they were the first to get to display the new belts, and it looked it was sharp. It was nice looking. So we move along. They're okay, but from what I hear, Carl Gotch, he wanted more. Wasn't too interested in that. He wanted bigger matches, and it's like, no, we got a face champion. You're a face, and he didn't want to give up his gimmick.
And he was not a young guy, right? He was, I think, in his late 40s.
Yes, but he was a good shooter, without a doubt.
Yeah. He looked like he was in pretty good shape, even at that age.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to get in there and test the guy, but you got to do what the company tells you, and it's like, okay, he's not interested, so let's do this. Then comes Baron Mikel Cicluna and King Curtis Iakea. Now, believe it or not, our friends out there, the King used to be a prince at one time in the 60s. Remember seeing that, Benny?
Yes, yeah. I'm having some technical difficulties with the pictures here for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it is Nikita up there messing with us.
I see it.
Oh, you see
Gotch and Goulet, I can see.
Yeah, I see Gotcha. Yeah, no, I had one slide for everybody, but no, it cut off at 2, so we're gonna have to just swing it. I had some great pictures too, so yeah, the next one is really good pictures.
No baloney, guys. I saw it beforehand, and Benny put together a nice spread.
I had 17 slides for tonight of this alone. 16 title changes, and one was Danucci and the Cannonball Pat Barrett. But now, Gotch, it looks like once they lost, he kind of did a bye-bye. I don't see him wrestling much after that.
No, he was, like I said, he wanted to do his own thing. Wasn't really interested in that. It was a nice, try to dangle the carrot, but he wasn't interested in that carrot. So they parted, good enough terms, but we never saw the great Carl Gotch again after that. He was active, without a doubt, but not in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation.
Did they throw him a bone to give him the title, or like was he, one of those squeaky wheels get the grease kind of thing?
Sure. And again, you only had one championship for a single back then, the heavyweight belt, and then Pedro owned that, and so it's like, all right, the tag team, go ahead, whatever, let him have that, try to keep him happy, and then it just didn't work. But to us, the fans, it was a huge deal. We were really impacted by whoever the tag team champions of the world were. Now, we got the magazines, so we saw other areas who, other tag team champions. But for us, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation tag team champions were the world tag team champions to us. So it was great. Now, the first title change on television, which would become a standard, was Baron Cicluna and King Curtis when they defeated Gotch and Goulet. Now, that's fine. I mean, it was a good setup to actually logical promotional thinking. Let's do this on television, because the arenas, that could be, you would bring your hot matches, and that's why we would get the Big X. And right around this time, as it's going into 72, is when you got the spoiler, and that's when the Big X really started, because they said it was too graphic, too violent, which meant they want you to come to the arena to see it. But this way, they were going to be sure you tuned in to the longest running infomercial in television history, the TV wrestling. without a doubt, because all it was to set up the upcoming cards, especially WOR in New York. That was it. If you look at the timing on many things that have happened throughout the history of wrestling, I mean, they're taped in the 3-hour intervals, but they were shown in a succession that it would be like, okay, this Monday night will be in the Garden. So this match was shown. So now when we announce the next month's show, it has some merit to it. And people are excited. So yeah, it's a big infomercial, but we loved it. Now today, it's reversed roles. If they do a house show, without it being a pay-per-view covered event, it's just like nothing. Everything is going to take place on television. And from a lot of people I've talked to, they say that's basically what's helping to kill wrestling today, is that we've reversed roles where you'd have to go to the arena to see the good things, but now you just sit home in your easy chair, and you still got to pay an arm and a leg, unless you buy a package, like a sports package, I guess, right, Benny? You know more about that than I do.
Oh yeah, and it's funny because I'm having flashbacks, and I'm going back as far as like Ray Morgan, and you'd be watching a match, and maybe a minute into it, then you'd hear like him coming, the tape of whatever arenas were coming up, the White Plains, where else? Trying to think where else? Sunnyside Garden, Island Garden, the Garden, you name it, and he was doing the spiel for all those arenas,
doing the voiceover at the beginning of those matches, right? Then Vince would take that over, and then into the 80s, Howard Finkel would do it. So yeah, I mean, I like it because, especially in New York, it was tough because they're trying to cover not just Madison Square Garden, but Long Island and Torrington, Connecticut, and a lot of other like New Haven. So they were trying to hit all of those markets as well. So it's tough. And a lot of times all you could do, you didn't have time to do the promo by ringside. So they would just hit you with the voiceover. Because for the collectors like I am, it's like, man, will you stop that? You're killing the first part of the match. Because believe it or not, before videotaping, I used to record the matches with audio. And we loved it. It was one way of preserving. So
right?
Those voiceovers were big. And I guess other different sports and probably even music venues did the same thing through the years. It's a way it ingrains in your head what's coming up. Run to the calendar and put it on the wall. So the King and the Baron, they hold the belts for a while. Baron had as tag team champion, he had a main event with Pedro at the Garden, which was good. Glad to see it. We love our Baron Cicluna, and he deserved it very
now,
well.
wasn't he back in the day the U.S. tag champ with Smasher Sloan, I believe? But that was going back a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, he's got quite a long history. And when you look at the man, it's not just that he had the height, but he was like an octopus, because he was like, I call Killer Kowalski and Dominic DeNucci and Baron Cicluna like an octopus. They don't look like Mr. America or Mr. Atlas, but if they latch on to you, you're not going to get loose.
I think they call it like sinew strength.
Yeah, the ligaments are
not
incredible.
the muscle. They got yeah.
I mean, when you shook hands with a guy like Kowalski, it's like you could feel it. If this guy squeezes, I'm probably going to go to the emergency room, because he's just got that much power in his hand. And that's why, he would apply the claw, because he did the claw as well for a while, usually abdominal. And it was like, yeah, I would believe Kowalski could make you submit with his grip. Damn.
Oh, yeah.
So here, to answer your question earlier about, do you throw a bone? Well, to make the people happy, Chief Jay Strongbow and Sonny King, they make a team out of them. And on May 22nd of 72, they defeat Cicluna and Curtis in Madison Square Garden. Now, here you go. Back to the Garden, right? It's like, okay, that's good. That was needed. But Pampero Firpo was wrestling Pedro that night. Now he was like the big thing. They gave him a push and a half. It was like
Oh
pushing a
yeah,
butt,
I remember that. Yes.
and he was good. I mean, on television, he certainly because actually the month before he gave the Chief his first defeat at Madison Square Garden. It was a count out, but he won nevertheless. And it's like, holy shit, Firpo beat the Chief. So it's like the wild bull of the Pampas, Ampero Firpo. So also that night on May 22nd, the Chief filled in for Gorilla Monsoon and started a trend against Lou Albano, where any face, anytime, just put him in the ring with Albano, and you'll have the bloodbath, and everybody goes home happy. And Lou runs. You don't beat him. That was
No,
the
no pin, right?
catch.
No pin.
No pin, no submission. Just beat the living shit out of Lou. He'll bleed like a gunshot, like a shotgun, and he runs away.
But
And
it,
it's
it
like
was it was a payoff for the fans, though, right? They got they got their payoff.
it worked to I don't know if anybody could do better. For as much that has been said about Lou Albano in a negative way over the years, I say that's a bunch of shit. Nobody was more dedicated than him to do his job. And I personally, when we were in Baltimore, this was in 75, and he wrestled Bruno, and it was a great card, but that's all you needed. You could have gave everybody all else the night off, and it would have packed the house. Bruno bloodied him, and it was right before intermission. So a friend of mine and I, we go down and we're looking. It's like, I mean, it went from the ring is covered. They're trying to mop it up as best they could. The state athletic commissioners were having a shit fit, but it went all the way to the dressing room. And it's like, that's no bullshit. That's real blood, man. Look at it. It was wild. So God bless you, Lou. You certainly you would sell it. Someone on the Prism Wrestling for the Spectrum. Dick Graham used to do the play-by-play. Cal Rudman would do the color, and he used to call him the Cowardly Lion, and it was very appropriate. It was funny. But
No, we
thank God
love
for Lou.
even though he was a heel. How could you not love Lou?
My God. And then he, the stories go that he would start hitting the bottle that afternoon. And by the time they were rolling at night, he was full-blown lit. And a lot of times, especially for the Manager of the Year award in 77 and a couple of other things, it's like, yeah, it's not hard to figure out Lou had a snootful without a doubt. And he and Vince did not like each other at all. And Junior fired him like 20 times, and Senior rehired him 25. It's like, no. We ain't getting along with that Lou Albano. I don't care what he did.
You could almost see it like on the old interviews with with Vince Jr. and Lou.
Yes.
There was a certain like the look on Vince's face. I don't think you could feign that kind of disgust.
No, and a couple of times when he latched onto Vince, and Vince would be like, now look, pal, let's do the interview, okay? And it's like, Vince is really, he's got his belly full right now. That's enough. And then Bruno's last taping, I think it was August, it was 1980, like August 17th. And he was interviewing Moondogs at that time. Bruno was, and Albano comes out, and Vince was sitting at his place at the table. So, all of a sudden, Bruno's standing there, and, Albano comes up and he takes over the interview, and he's like, and him over there, and look at him at that table. And you hear him go over to the table. He rips his shirt off and he throws it. You can't see what's happening. It's got to be in Vince's direction. And then 2 seconds later, the shirt comes flying right back at him, full blown, right? So Vince goes over and joins Bruno. And then it's like you could see Vince's words form in his mouth. He cut his mic off, but you could see him say fucking asshole. He's had it. He's like totally. And Bruno's just like, what are you going to do? It's Lou Albano.
It's Lou, right?
So anyway, we got the Chief and Sonny King. Now, for some reason, before the titles changed hands, on March 29th at the Civic Center in Baltimore, the match between those four, it was taped between Curtis and Cicluna and the Chief and Sonny King. And I don't know what the reason was till this day, but nothing, unless they thought maybe they were going to change the belts that night. That would be kind of quick. I mean, March 29th to May 22nd, you still got some time and they get a lot more draw out of it. So I don't know whatever the reasoning for it or anything else, but, we did see like maybe 5 minutes of it. And it was the same deal where they were, Curtis was using the pipe, nailing the Chief with this. It looked like a pipe. You could tell pretty good. And, they were over, of course, the Chief and Sonny King. But the idea there was the fans were clamoring to see the Chief get a title match. And it's like, that's not going to happen. He's not going to turn heel. They're not going to put him in there with Pedro. So they threw the fans a bone and made Chief co-holder of the tag team title. And we loved it. We were happy with that.
So it was more for the Chief than I thought it was just to give Sonny King a bump.
No, it was for the fans. Chief was like, He didn't need it. Chief was like Snuka. You don't need to put a belt on him. He's good just as he is. You don't need anything. But the fans are so itchy. It's like, okay, let's make everybody happy. Make them tag champions. Well, to make a long story short, they didn't get along. They didn't like each other, the Chief and Sonny King. Sonny King, yeah, he had a little bit of an ego problem. He felt like he was the team. So Chief told me, he said, I told the old man, you book him up in Bangor, don't put me on the card. And then the next month, you book me and don't put him on the card. And you can make the B-Towns, you can make them main event. And he said, you see the difference. So after that, Chief said, I don't want to work with him. That's why they only had like a 5-week reign, and that was it. They were
36 days. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. But one of the greatest tag teams of all time was born from that, with Professor Tanaka and Mr. Fuji. And now Bruno discovered Professor Tanaka. He saw him on one of his world tours, and he went back and said to the old man, you got to get this guy. He looks like a tank. And he's great with the martial arts. And at that time, I remember, you could tell he was married. Professor used to split cinder blocks with his forehead. I said, oh, God, wow, that's amazing. So it's like that was natural. And then Professor said, I got somebody else. You could bring in Fuji. He was known as the Great Fuji at that time. This was before his West Coast run. And it was like, there you go. Putting one shoe on the other foot, and you put the shoe on the other foot, and you got a match set. Boom. And off they went. And from that point on, I mean, the Valiants, as we will discuss, they went a year solid. Fuji and Tanaka, they went about a year too. They had a break in between.
2 days short, yeah.
But, I mean, it's like, now you got to remember, fans out there, World War II wasn't that long ago at this point, in the early 70s.
Less than 30 years, yeah.
Yeah. So there was still a lot of animosity. That's why Waldo von Erich was over so big. I mean, he against Bruno, yeah, that would sell out because he was a big Nazi gimmick, not just German, but he came out, he did the Heil Hitler salute, he had the helmet, he had all kind of paraphernalia. So he would piss off a lot of people that were veterans. And, a lot of veterans are disabled from their days in the war. And Tanaka and Fuji as well. So it's like, did they play off of that? Sure. And why the hell not? That's why wrestling is the shits today. What the hell can you do? What are you going to do to draw heat? You can't say anything. You can't do anything. I mean, you'll have the station ticketed. It's like you lose your license, you'll be sued out of existence. So it's like, what do you do or say? And that's why they keep doing these flips back and forth, face to heel, face to heel. It's like, yeah, who cares? So Fuji and Tanaka, they were both Hawaiian. They were not Japanese. So Harry
Fujiwara, right? Yeah.
Fujiwara, and then the professor, uh,
Charlie
had
Kalani, wasn't he?
Charlie Kalani, and he went on to Hollywood. He got a little bit fed up with Fuji over the years because Fuji was just like, my God, he would, because Chief used to tell me, I tell Fuji, you do that shit to me and I ain't going to work with you. Because he would pull the ribs of ribs.
But he was the
where
master ribber, right? Yeah.
anything, just about anything short of setting somebody's hair on fire. I mean, it was he was pretty nasty. So Professor got his fill, and it was like he went on to Hollywood and went against Chuck Norris in those movies, and it was like, you can't beat this guy. I mean, he's perfect for Hollywood
Oh
because
yeah.
somebody
Like
else.
so many movies. Yeah.
Yes, and it's like the great part was Professor didn't have to memorize a lot of lines, which believe me, I've done it. It's a pain in the royal ass because I got to know what the hell you're going to say. Now I got to know what I'm going to say. So if all you do is stand there and look like you're constipated, chop the room up, that's beautiful.
Look menacing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's best way you can go. That's great roles to get. So here they go. Tanaka and Fuji, they're off to the races. So promoting genius takes over. What do? Well, Pedro, he was doing okay, but they were starting to watch the numbers. The bean counters were watching the numbers, and it's like, huh, we're starting to see some lapses here and there in some of the cities. So they bring Bruno in. And that's when we get the TV match Bruno and Pedro against Tanaka and Fuji. So next thing you know, salt is flying. Pedro and Bruno are both blinded by the salt. They start swinging away. They end up banging on each other. Then the tempers flare. And they're mad. And it's like, okay, I'm going to get you and I'm going to get you. So then they decide they're going to make this big match at Shea Stadium on September the 30th of 72. And
Showdown at Shea. Yeah.
it was beautiful. It made sense. It's like, why the hell not? But as we all know, it was the snooze fest of all time. They went about an hour and a half, and it's like, my God, please somebody
75
do
minutes,
something.
wasn't it, or something? Yeah.
Yeah, that's when George Steele tried to hit the ring. And I heard Monsoon, and I heard another time it was Ernie Ladd, whichever story you want to believe, bet that he couldn't make it to the ring before he got intercepted by the police. But it's like, it makes sense. George Steele, the mortal enemy of both men in the ring, Morales and Bruno. Somebody also said the old man sent him out there because it was dying. It's like, yeah, go out there, man. Go do something. And let the police grab him because, they had the stick around his throat. It's like, they're not going to do that if it wasn't some kind of bullshit because they're snapping photos. That'll be your badge and your career right there. So it had to be just all part of the gimmick. No problem. And so then the next month at Madison Square Garden, Bruno and Pedro team up and, then they go against Tanaka and Fuji. And of course, here we go again. They win, but there's a DQ, but everybody goes home happy. So Fuji and Tanaka they go about their business, chopping and kicking and making their demonstrations on television, breaking boards and things like that. It was like, it's great.
Great tag team, though. Great tag
team. And it's as singles as well. Tanaka against Chief, Tanaka against and Fuji against Chief, anybody. And in main events against Morales, and in some cities against Bruno. It's like, yeah, whatever. You can match anybody against them as a team or a singles, and baby, you got yourself box office gold. So, as we heard from our good friend Tony Garea last week, as the year goes on into 73, it's getting close to, again, Memorial Day. Now, this was the first time the belts changed hands at the Hamburg Fieldhouse. It was Tony Garea, and they put him, as we learned from Tony, with Haystacks because they said, Tony's Rookie of the Year. Haystacks was kind of like, he was more a 60s kind of guy, but, he was a company man. He made a lot of people a lot of money over the years. The promoters appreciated that. So it's like, okay, throw Haystacks a bone. It was funny because he would keep the belt like wrapped around his overalls, and he would strap it that way and wear it around his waist. And that made sense. So he ain't going to wear it. You know that. So Tony and Haystacks were a good team. It helped get Tony over as well. So the problem was, here's where part of the curse that as I alluded to in the advertisement, the curse of the tag team championship. It was like uh, it was in the Garden on August 27th. Tony and Haystacks are still champions, but they're wrestling Tanaka and Fuji. Well, at the end of the match, and the match is done, Tanaka gives a splash to Tanaka, or Calhoun gives Tanaka a splash. He decides to give him an extra one. Well, he shouldn't have done the extra one. He cracked like 3 of his ribs. It's like, son of a bitch. So now, because I think they were going to take the belts off of Tony and Calhoun sooner, but it's like, okay, you got to let Tanaka heal a little bit. Because if anybody's had bruised ribs, God forbid, broken ribs, I mean, every breath, it's just agony. I mean, man, you don't want anything. You don't even want to think about the bathroom, or God forbid, if you get like a virus,
Right.
like hear me, I'm suffering from the tail end of a sinus infection. A couple of days ago was a complete just torture. So September 11th, they get the belts back, Tanaka and Fuji. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. That's the first time a team regained the tag team championship
Yeah,
without
first
leaving
2 time
the
champions,
area.
correct.
Yeah, they were still here, and I like that because it showed you that anything can happen. Because we're not that dumb. We would pick up on things. We believed, but yet in the back of our minds, we still knew a lot what was going on. So it's kind of like you weren't expecting title changes in Baltimore or Boston or anywhere else with the heavyweight belt, but this made you start to think a little bit more. It's like, huh, well, Tanaka and Fuji got the belts back. You would figure that would never happen, but there you
Right.
go. It just did. But then that set up, in my opinion, one of the most popular tag teams, as I said
Yes.
last week with Tony, when Dean Ho came in, and as Tony enlightened all of us, that was Fuji's suggestion. It was both Hawaiian and
Another
worked
Hawaiian. Yeah. Dean Higuchi, right?
Dean Hamaguchi, and they worked together, down in Maui and all over the islands of Hawaii. And Dean Ho was no bullshit. He really was martial arts, but it was so smart because there's even a match with he against Tanaka. And it's like they called it a martial arts match. And it wasn't that long after like Kung Fu, the television series with David Carradine, even though that was bullshit because I got robbed from Bruce Lee, one of my idols. Green Hornet wasn't that far gone, but Bruce Lee was very well known. So to have Dean Ho against Tanaka, that was great. That was drawing. But as I said to Tony last week, when Tony and Dean Ho won the belts, and that was the last time, or no, that not yet. They were still at the Hamburg Fieldhouse when they won the belts. The fans mobbed the ring, and I don't know what happened. Somebody must have fell asleep at the switch because the belts went back to the dressing room instead of keeping them close by at ringside so they could hand them and be done with it because it was the last match of the whole taping for the 3 hours. But it wasn't, it was a riot, but a controlled riot where people were just exuberant. And because
Yeah.
Fuji, I got a copy of the match and he grabs the Wizard. It's like, because the Wizard was their manager. Let's make that known. He was their manager, and that was his first and only tag team champions for the Grand Wizard. So, he grabbed the Wizard, and, but people didn't even pay attention to them. They were just so happy. Uh, then a few days later, or a few weeks later, that's when Pedro would lose to Stasiak, and then a week after that, Bruno beats Stasiak and becomes champion. So we ended 73 on the high note. Everybody and his brother was happy. Bruno's the champion. Tony Garea and Dean Ho are tag champions. Life couldn't get any better. Chief was still in the area. Andre had just hit the area. And it's like, man, we were just
We're in
We
babyface
were,
heaven, right?
yeah, but you had great heels too. Iron Mike McCord. I mean, he would do jobs for people on television, but it was solid, and he was solid at the arenas. They didn't always have him put somebody over, but without a doubt, Iron Mike McCord,
He
he
was
was somebody.
only there for that 1 year, correct? 73?
Yeah, he went on to become Austin Idol
Right,
down
after the
south.
plane crash, yeah.
So I mean, hey, here's a great guy, but he would do exercises in the ring, and it was like kind of like Iron Mike Sharp almost, very much along the same. So then, and I tell you what, Benny, what are we into, an hour already?
56 minutes, yeah.
Okay, how long can we go?
Well, we can go a little bit while longer. We're going to
All
talk
right.
about the team, right? Our favorite team next.
Yes, and I got a lot to say, and but I want to make sure to get something in because real quick, let me just jump ahead because I don't know how far because I get long winded. This is the 50th anniversary tonight of the riot that occurred at the Hamburg Fieldhouse. It was this date in 1975 when the Blackjacks, who had just made their appearance the taping before without a manager, they're wrestling Dominic DeNucci and Victor Rivera. And in the middle of the match, Lanza runs to the dressing room. He comes out with Lou Albano. And Albano, they're shaking hands. Okay. And he runs over to the table. He says, I got him, baby. I got him. They're mine. They're mine. And so it's just like, well, apparently Antonino Rocca was doing the color. We just witnessed that the Blackjacks have signed Lou Albano. And then it got crazy. It was the last match of the taping, the last match of the hour. The steps are broken up. And Vince is screaming about the nails in the steps. And they're swinging them at each other. There all kind of shit is flying. And then they cut off. They said, we're running out of time. And it ended with all five fighting on the floor. But as I was told by eyewitnesses, when police were called in, they had to use tear gas to clear the Hamburg Fieldhouse. That's how wild it got. And it's like,
That's amazing.
yeah,
Wow.
You have to. I mean, look, for you people, the fans that are like us, that were around at that time, you know what it meant. It was like, it was so important. For a lot of us, like me, an abused child, it was like an extended family that basically saved me. And God bless him, because as I told Chief years later, he's like, we were just doing our job. And it's like, but you don't know how many lives that you actually affected and helped to mold. Believe me, it really, like Bruno, I mean, how many people got into weightlifting and bodybuilding because of him, or developed themselves. And it's like, yeah, that was so exciting to be a part of, just watching that. So, okay, the Valiant Brothers. Hold on one second. Let me kill that. So the Valiant Brothers, May the 6th of 1974. That's the last time a belt changed hands at the Hamburg Fieldhouse. But, wow, what a start. Now,
What made them so great, Nikita? I mean, and it's ironic because you were very close with Johnny Valiant, and I was actually Jimmy's commissioner, his first commissioner for his BWC, Boogie's Wrestling Camp. So we both have a little
right?
bit of history with the Valiants. You have a lot of history with the Valiants.
Yes. Yes, we both have history, so we know of what we speak, but we're not talking out of school here. What we're telling you, what we're sharing with you, is the passion that those two, I should correct that to those three, because they teamed up with Lou Albano. What they brought to professional wrestling, it changed the landscape. And I think most of the successful tag teams and I'm talking about recent history, will tell you they molded themselves after the Valiants. Now, I'll give you a quick little history of how they started. And for this, students, we're going to go to the book, what the show's based on, When It Was Real.
There you go.
Now, if anybody knows who the Bear Man is, Dave McGinty, Gene Dubois. This is the guy that used to bring the bear to the ring. No baloney. He was contacted by Bobby Heenan, who Bobby had very close relations with Jimmy Valiant, and he had recently seen this John L. Sullivan, ergo Johnny Valiant. And he said, I really believe that these two together could be a hot team. When you go see Dick the Bruiser, because he was going to wrestle with Bruno in Pittsburgh on September the 7th of 73, he said, tell Dick the Bruiser, actually, because I think he could go up there with Dick. So the Bruiser was there. He watched them. They put them together as a team. And it was like, yeah, you guys are coming back with me to Chicago. And the next week they were on WGN, and they set the world on fire. Now, Bruno was the front man for WWWF. He was a talent scout. Not like...
Yeah, he found him everywhere.
Yeah, not official title or anything, but it's like when he sees somebody like that, because he and Dick the Bruiser were tag champions, and they were battling the Valiant Brothers. When Bruno became champion the second time, he was co-holder with Dick the Bruiser in Indianapolis. So it's like, things had to be bad for poor Bruno. It's like, son of a bitch, I'm only one man. What do you want from me? But okay, they did it. But then I think Bruno convinced the old man, you got to get these guys in here. And he obviously was right. Were they great tacticians in the ring? No, but they were wild men. And nobody was better on the microphone than the Valiant Brothers. I mean,
but they had that chemistry in the ring. They worked well together.
Yes, it's just like they were brothers, like birth brothers who through the years, I know what time, he's going to get up, and he knows what time I'm going to go to bed. I mean, they were perfect together. Then you throw the Maniac in there, and here's what I like to call true fiction. When Lou made some of his earlier interviews, he said, I purchased their contract from Bobby Heenan and the AWA. And it's like, that's right. That's great. It gives it some credibility. I really enjoyed that. You're finding out years later, at the time we didn't know, but it actually was true. So that, along with the fact that Jimmy was the one that named Lou captain. That's where the title Captain Lou Albano came from, because Jimmy would always call him captain. Yeah, captain, we're going to do it for you tonight, baby. We're going to put him there for the captain. And then Lou liked that. So from that point on, call me captain, Captain Lou. So that's who put it out. And I verified that years later with Jimmy and Lou. And it's like, yeah, it just fit. It made sense. So what did we get with the Valiant Brothers? Well, when they started to tear the arenas up, somebody got the great idea. Now, Tanaka and Fuji, as we mentioned, did wrestle Bruno and Pedro in a main event at Madison Square Garden. Well, the Valiant Brothers did it 3 times. And it started on August 26th. They wrestled Bruno and Chief. Now, get this. This was really wild because the decision, it was stopped by the curfew, okay, because they had them on last and they just kept running and running. But then there were rulings by a couple of judges, and then the referee made his decision. It's like, what the hell are you talking about, judges? But the ringside officials, the State Athletic Commission, technically would have a say in things. Because if people remember back in 76 when Bruiser Brody pinned Bruno in the Garden, the judges disallowed it at ringside, the State Athletic Commission. They said, no, he had his feet on the ropes. So that decision does not stand. So then they ordered a return Texas death match. So then they had a return match, but they had to wait till October 7th. Sometimes building dates just weren't always available, because you got to know what New York, what the hell. I mean, you got the Rangers, the Knicks, everything else going on.
Oh, yeah.
When the circus would hit the town or whatever, concerts galore, everybody wanted to play the Garden. So for the October 7th return match, the problem there they were worried about was that Monday Night Football had started just like a year before, and the Jets were playing the Dolphins that night. And it's like, oh shit, everybody's going to stay home and watch that game. They were really scared that the Garden was going to be probably like 5,000 or more down. But guess what? They weren't. It was a sellout again because it was the Valiants against two of the most popular wrestlers we'd ever seen, Bruno and the Chief. So they had a third match in January of 75, but that was kind of like a throwaway because that's right around the Arion turn, and they wanted Arion to dismantle Larry Zbyszko. Then Bruno came in to make the save. But I think the Valiants hold the record for most main events, not just at the Garden, Baltimore, Bruno and Andre, Bruno and Bobo, Andre and Bobo, Washington, Boston, Philadelphia, Bruno and Chief in Philadelphia like every other week for a while. And it's like, man, it just, you couldn't do no wrong with them. Then he would throw Kowalski in there and give it a 6-man. It's like, wow, this is just like a promoter's dream. Just keep these guys coming. And I don't know why it stopped, but it was a year. It was a full year run before they took the belts off them on May 13th.
Yeah, 370 days. Yep.
Dominic and Victor Rivera were a great team, and we were happy. But as we talked with Tony last week, we always wanted to see that heel team beat. Always want somebody to beat them. So, you kept throwing that line, reeling it in and reeling it in. And finally, I guess they figured, okay, this is played out. That's enough. So we got a great team, Dominic and Victor. And here's where, when I said, where have you gone, Victor Rivera? Wrestling fans turned their lonely eyes to you. It's like that big question, whatever happened to Victor Rivera? But his curse started with this run. All of a sudden, Victor Rivera decides, I don't want to do this anymore because the IWA was starting. Now, we weren't told that. We were told that Victor had a meeting with his lawyer and that they were he would rather go for a singles match or singles title. And he didn't want to be part of the tag team anymore. That happened on a TV taping on June 25th. And he said, I'm going to fulfill my commitments with Dominic. And then, after a certain point, I'm not going to do it anymore. And then they allowed DiNucci to pick his partner. And he says to the world, I select Irish Pat Barrett. And it's like, why? Why? I mean, holy shit.
To this day, I still say that.
Well, Barrett, at least you got to give him credit because he said, I'm not going to try to fill Victor Rivera's shoes, but I'm going to try to be a good partner for Dominic DiNucci. So at least we didn't have too long to endure because July 19th was Victor's last match in the Garden. They were against the Blackjacks, he and Dominic. And so the Blackjacks had their first crack at the title. And then, of course, August 26th was when the Blackjacks won the belts. So and it was like, thank God. And I like the Blackjacks without a doubt. Yeah. I always liked Blackjack Mulligan. I mean, shit, he was a solid monster. And it's not like we hadn't seen enough claws by then with both of them, but it's like, well, I tell you what, I think Blackjack Mulligan could crush your friggin' skull if he got a good enough grip on you. So he's believable.
He was a legit tough guy, though, from all accounts. He was he was tough outside the ring.
I listened to an interview that he did one time about fighting Andre, and he said, we got into it. We were both a little bit lit. He said, and Andre was pissed. He said, I knew I couldn't back down. It's like, boy, if I hit him, I better make it good. He said he smashed him good alongside of the head, and it staggered him, but it pissed him off. It's like, now what? Shit. He said, but at least it was stopped before I got killed. He said, because they crashed through like the screens, in a hotel and the window, everything, and they spilled out. And I was like, holy shit.
Geez, how many people take to stop that fight? Holy crap.
Well, yeah, who the hell's going to break them two up? They're fighting out on the beach. No, even with guns or whatever, as police, I'm like, oh, call for the dog catchers with the tranquilizers, hit them with the dart guns or something. Jeez. So that's that brought us the Blackjacks, and they stayed for a while, and then I mean, I've got they're in great demand, Mulligan especially, and
another great team.
Yes, a great team, and AWA. I mean, before they arrived, I mean, talking about magazines, geez, I used to see the photos. Heenan and the Blackjacks just bloody, because Bobby Heenan was not. He was equal to Lou Albano. He wasn't afraid to bleed.
He was not shy about bleeding.
Yeah, so it's like you put those three in a 6-man with somebody. You want to get some good heat, put them out there and just chop them up, and fans will go home happy, and the bucks will flow, man, just like the blood. So, but unfortunately, they could only stay a certain amount of time, and then that was it. They had to go. And so, fine. Then Cerdan and Parisi come along. Yeah.
That's another why. What did the Wizard call him? Was it Screwy Louie and Greasy Parisi? Something like that, right? I think it was that.
Something like that, Benny, because it was tough to swallow. But I like the setup they did with it was to get Bruno and Parisi against Koloff and Superstar, because Cerdan and Parisi wrestled Superstar and Koloff the month before, and they almost killed them. Bruno hit the ring to make the save on that one. And then so they said, okay, that'll be the team for next month. Why they didn't choose Dominic to go with one of the other, Cerdan, in my opinion, or Parisi. No, it doesn't matter. Parisi would have been better. And they knew each other. I mean, they were very close. They had worked together forever. It's like, why the hell wouldn't you just do that? That would have given you something, especially with Dominic having the whole thing fall apart with Victor Rivera. And it's like, but no, they decided to throw these two out there, and it was like, and they went actually too long, in my opinion, all the way to May 11th.
Yeah, they had almost 6 months, right? 5.5 months, I believe.
Yeah, it was too damn long. So here comes, little did we know, his last run, Killer Kowalski, and with his protege, Big John Studd, also Chuck O'Connor.
Yeah.
And it was like we had, did we have a clue? Kowalski's just got that stature. He looks like a crane. He's kind of got like that hunch to him. You don't want to screw with him. No way. He'll kill you. But
it's tell. Like when Moolah was Spider Lady. I mean, how many women are built like baked potatoes? You knew it was her.
Yeah, that stature. That's Killer Kowalski, And they didn't do too much talking. But when you'd hear them, like the overhead mic at the Garden or the ring, they actually had mics attached to the corners. When sometimes you would pick that up, you could tell that's Kowalski. And a couple of times, somebody slipped and said, "Oh, Kowalski." It's like, oh, shit, they ain't supposed to say that. But I tell you what, Miss Krieger must have known, because it was Jose Gonzalez and Dominic wrestling the Executioners at the Garden. And Kowalski got dumped out of the ring, and she started whacking on him. He turned around and took a swing back at her. It's like they had a running feud from Baltimore, believe me. So that was a good team. They really were, and they were very close, because God forbid when John Studd got the cancer, Walter had him cured at one point, believe it or not, through holistics and different herbal medications.
He was big on that, wasn't he? Vegetarian.
Vegetarian. He believed in magnets, the power of magnets. Nikolai swears to me, he says he had him cured. But then Stud, like all of us, John Minton, his son was a policeman in Baltimore. So he didn't like to talk about his father too much because he didn't want the publicity. He felt his father deserved it. But John Stud, like all of us, he just got the bug and he wanted to get back in there. So he started steroids. So because he lost a lot of weight, obviously, through the cancer and the treatments. So you know what steroids did? It accelerated the growth of the cancer. And then, boom, we lost him. But they were a solid team. And I don't want to bore people to death. I want him to come back next week. So I'm going to suggest this. Let me explain how the title was stripped before we cut. And then we'll pick up next week with the Indians.
Sure, that sounds great. Yeah, perfect.
All right. And again, with Nikolai and Walter. So October the 5th of 76, this is of course, the chief had returned back to the territory. He had gone to Georgia in August of 75. And we missed him. In the meantime, Billy White Wolf hits the territory. And that was good. Believe it or not, White Wolf had been on the East Coast back in the 60s as Indian Billy White Wolf. And he was friends with Saddam Hussein and the whole thing, without a doubt. He was Iranian, and it's like, okay, whatever, who cares? So to us, he was Indian Billy White Wolf from Ardmore, Oklahoma. So they played it well. The day the executioners came to town, when they made their TV, or when they actually won the belts from Parisi and Cerdan, White Wolf was in a match, I believe, with Skandar Akbar. And who hits the ring to make the save because he's getting murdered? Nobody knows he's back yet, was the chief. And it was like, yahoo! The place went crazy. So there you go. You're off to the races. So now you got Strongbow and White Wolf together. And yes, we called them the Indians back then. And they just went at it with the executioners. For all the way through 76. They were at Shea Stadium when Bruno made his comeback against Stan Hansen. They had their match at Shea Stadium. And then on October the 5th, I think it was said by Vince, this is one of the last opportunities for the Indians. If they don't do it tonight, I don't think they're ever going to be able to take the belts from the executioners. Well, they got the sleeper on executioner number 2, one fall number 1. And fall number 2, they got it again, but a little bit of confusion going on. One pulls 2 out of the ring, it crawls in, but here comes a third executioner. Does anybody know who that is or that was? It was Nikolai.
I guess wait to see if anybody, I was going to say, see if anybody in the chat room.
It was Nikolai Volkov. And you could tell by that lumbering run of Nikolai. It's like, my God, that's him. So, of course,
again, a very, very unique physique. I mean, this guy was solid.
Absolutely. So Worley said, oh, no, bullshit. They hit the bell. So then October 26th, the next taping, 3 weeks later, that's when Wooly Gilzenberg, the president of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, comes out and says, we're going to strip the executioners of the tag team title. And I proclaim that there's going to be a tag team tournament, because they didn't want the same debacle where you can just name champions or do whatever. So that worked out well. So if you want to hear the conclusion, tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Nikita, funny though, we've chatted now for an hour and almost 20 minutes talking about tag teams. We're not even remotely close to being finished, but nope. I'm thinking about now 2025. Is somebody going to do a podcast in 2065? Who are they going to be able to talk about nowadays? Because I can barely tell you who are the champions, the tag champions, but it's so uninspiring, and it's for me. It's time to take either a food or a bathroom break when I watch it now.
Slap me hard. I beg forgiveness. I forgot to add this. the ladies, when they won their tag team belts in 73, October 15th, it was the Heartthrob team, Vicky Williams and, oh God, I keep thinking of Judy Martin, Joyce Grable. And it was like, wow, that was cool. But all they did was take some pictures with the old man. And it was actually the NWA title. Tony Rose and Donna Christianello, we didn't even know they were champions at the time. Two more beautiful ladies, by the way. And Tony Rose, we're going to try to get her on here one of these times. We're trying.
Tony Rose was on Dan and Benny. She was absolutely fabulous. I would love to chat with her again.
Yes. I reached out to her, so we'll see if she responds. But yes, so we must acknowledge that was great. But why they didn't just run with that, I think it would have been gold. I really do. But nobody asked me.
Yeah.
Well, I hope I hope everybody learned. You were thoroughly entertained because I enjoyed it myself. It's just fun to always. It's the greatest catharsis that I know of for myself. Just talking about it.
I just I lament so many things about today's wrestling that we had back then, we don't have now, like the managers, the 2 out of 3 falls matches, the draws, and last but not least, the emphasis on tag teams. I watched those tag team title matches. Nothing was going to budge me. Nowadays, if I could care less. Like I said, I barely know who the champions are. The tag teams are meaningless now. I think it's just, to give somebody something to do.
You left out something, Benny. Blood.
Well, go ahead.
There's no more blood.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. Well, they're bringing it back a little bit on Netflix. Not much, but yeah.
But
we'd see blood on TV. We'd see blood. We'd see blood at the garden.
Son of a bitch. If you see some of these horror movies, it's like, look, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, and Dracula, that's horror. All chopping up a woman that's half naked is not a horror movie. That's like a Slaughterhouse 5 thing. It's like, no, that's not even erotic. I don't even know what the hell you call it. But it's like, there's all the blood you could want. But if you have a cage match and nobody's even scratched, it's like, what the hell's going on here, man?
Well, and as far as I said, no more draws, but no more. How many times did a title match with Bruno or Pedro get stopped? Both ways for blood loss, right?
Or DQ or count out.
Never see that now. No such thing.
No.
And what a great way to end the match. And if it was Bruno, then you got set up for next month.
Right back to our first story of the night. It was like, as soon as Rocca got color, that was it, man. People wanted the head of Dr. Jerry and Dick the Bruiser, and they almost got it. Believe me, people were probably trying to kill them. It's sad, but I saw somebody go at Morocco with a knife. He was in a cage match with Atlas. They were on last. Tony had escaped, so he was gone. And Morocco's in the cage, and this idiot's got a knife, and he's climbing up. And Morocco's like, but you got to know, inside, he's got to be thinking, what the hell? But the guards did a great job. They made all police proud. That guy, he didn't get halfway up the cage. I think he got an enema with the knife, and his face, that was the best cage match I'd ever seen in my life. Let me tell you. It was like, well done, well done. You want to be a goof? Well, you welcome to Goof Haven.
FAFO, right? F around, yes. Find out.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. I just, not all the emotion we felt back then was good. Like when those fans rioted in 57. But you know what? We, right or wrong, we had passion. And nobody really has. They go to a wrestling event now and they want to sing along with Seth Rollins' theme song, even though the guy's a heel now. They're still singing along with it. It's entertainment. Back then, it was life and death. And
as I said in the book, you can't make people love you or hate you. And it's like, if you don't have it, it's just not going to pour forth, and it's not going to happen. And so it's like, you could come up with all the pyro and all, you can make videos and music, but you're not going to make people like. The last time Nikolai was in the WWE, they brought him in where they had that Russian girl and guy. because apparently what I was told, Vince was pissed off in a meeting, said, why in the hell can't they draw heat like Nikolai used to? And it's like, because nobody believes it, number one. And number two, they probably look at her and she was like a sex symbol kind of thing, right? So more than anything, she'd be a baby face, but it's like there's no heat there. So they tried to have Nikolai help, and he's like, I could do this shit with them. He's like, nobody believes it. It's nothing going to happen. He said, Vince, what the heck am I going to say? You know, USA, you know, 2 USA, Soviet number 1. He said, nobody listens to that shit. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you.
Long ball.
Well, I want to give many thanks to everyone who joined us tonight for When It Was Real. We have promised some great stuff going forward, and we're going to deliver the goods. So please hit the like and subscribe button so you won't miss any episodes on this great Monte and the Pharaoh YouTube channel. And I urge you to check the channel out. There's literally a treasure trove of excellent interviews and content, like last week's interview with the great Tony Garea. If you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend. That was even like for me, just from a pure fan's perspective, it was so great to chat with the man and learn about his history and his stories. But we'll be back next week actually to cover the rest of the tag teams from, I guess, what we got up to 77. So we're going to get up to about
well, the tail end of 76.
83.
December the 7th was when the belt, the tournament ended. So it's just about 77.
Got about another 17 or 8 title reigns to go. So for the great Nikita Brezhnikov, this is Benny Scala, the one and only player, also the poet laureate of the Monte and the Pharaoh channel, leaving you with this. Oh, how we love those great tag teams. They were so important to us, but now it seems the teams of today have no great feel. That's why we talk about When It Was Real. Good night, folks.
Us for done.